Hagane means steel in Japanese, and it is a pretty interesting specimen nowadays, mainly because if you look at any sort of used game market, no matter how common a game is, if it was from any point prior to basically the Xbox 360, it's gotten really stupidly expensive. Doesn't matter if it is the most common game ever, doesn't matter if it's one of those weird anomalies where it was actually a pretty common game that got stupid expensive for a dumb reason like Earthbound. Hagane has always maintained its price because it was always a rarity. In Japan, Hagane was a limited print game, and in North America even more so because it was only available to play as a rental from Blockbuster. And I don't know about the rest of my country, but I know my dirtball town never even had a Blockbuster back in the day. Not the point. The point is, if you have an official copy of Hagane, you have an actual rarity on your hands. And it also means that either you or its previous owner either worked at Blockbuster and grabbed it while they were trying to get rid of their inventory, rented it and never returned it, or whatever. But the point is, this game is actually genuinely a hard to find game. In fact, I never thought I would ever see it with my own two eyes, let alone play it. So it both humbles me and brings me great pleasure that I can share this game with you today. Now, the plot of Hagane, as far as I can tell, is ninja robots, which is like the third Super Nintendo game with that plot, but still, the giant expanded plot on that, I think, is you are some kind of doomsday fail-safe system in the form of a ninja robot fighting future space shoguns to save the world from some kind of robot invasion, I think. But really all you get is like 2 lines of dialogue at the start, and it doesn't really tell you much. So the plot's kind of a whiff, but at the same time, ninja robots. Do you really need much more? In an action game on the Super Nintendo, no. You really don't. Now, while playing Hagane, the first thing I noticed about the gameplay is everything is based on movement techniques. For example, you can run, you can jump, you can slide, you have a flipping attack that actually acts as a charged super weapon, and depending on how long you charge it and then attack, you'll do a different special attack, all of which have their own different variations of movement. For example, there's one that will just drop you straight down and be sort of almost a screen clearer. You've got one that'll move you forward a little bit and then jump straight back so that you can avoid damage while dealing it out in a sort of defensive offensive technique, which is pretty cool. And it just feels like every single thing you do in this game is geared towards allowing you to modify where your character's position in hitbox is to avoid a lot of enemies, which is good because there's a metric crap ton of them. Now, going back to that flipping technique I mentioned a second ago, we get to one of the things I don't like about this game, and that is there is a lot of inconsistency with your invulnerability, your hitbox, and really just where you are in general, because this flipping attack is supposed to allow you to basically dance through enemy attacks and ordnance. And half the time it'll do that, the other half the time, you're gonna run smack dab into them. And once you start this little flipping evasion technique, until you decide to stop, you have no control over your character. So you're basically committed to this, whether you like it or not, and that's not necessarily a good thing. On the other hand, it does mean that you have to get very, very good at this game in order to see some of the later levels. Which leads me to the second thing I noticed about this game, which is, for better or worse, this game is really bloody hard. Now, as I already mentioned, lots of enemies, and you're going to want to try and avoid as many of them as possible. And using your various movement techniques is really how it was intended to be done, I think, but you have a few different ways to deal with your problems. But in addition to enemies, you also have various environmental hazards, which requires you to either memorize bits of the map or understand your movement in such a way that you can just avoid them naturally, which can be very, very difficult. Then to complete the trifecta of difficulty, there's just how bloody unforgiving this game is. You have 3 health, and there's not a lot of health pickups in this game. There are a few, and there's even a few that extend your health bar by a single point, but those are incredibly few and far between. And to make things worse, no continues. Yeah, you run out of lives, you start over. Now, the nice thing is, this game does in fact feature a code that gives you unlimited lives, and even then I was having a lot of trouble with this game. By the time I got to the final stage, which every stage is like 5 levels long for some reason, I had that on, plus just to get through the final stage, I had to throw on an unlimited health cheat through the RF's code database. This game is really hard, but that said, it's going to give you a lot of replayability if you play this like an arcade game trying to get through on 1 credit. If you like hardcore action games, this game is going to blow your mind in terms of difficulty and gameplay, even though there's only something like maybe 15 levels in total. But it's a lot of fun once you get past the frustrating enemy layouts, as well as just how often you're going to be dying, because you're going to be seeing that a lot. Now, you are a ninja, and what do ninjas do best? Well, they kill things. And to do that, you're going to need weapons. And this game actually gives you quite a few to work with. I'm just going to point out right now, I am actively hobbling myself in this game because one of the weapons you get is a screen clearing bomb that you have to sort of resource manage your way to collecting enough of. But I can't show any footage of that because I used it once and I am 100% certain that thing will cause seizures. I mean, I'm not prone to seizures, but holy crap, after using that bomb, I was feeling rough. Like, seriously, I was feeling so queasy after that. The bomb is a great screen clearer, but if you're prone to seizures, this game might be one you want to skip because that is actually hazardous to your health. But that doesn't mean you're out of options when it comes to taking on the offensive. In addition to your crazy flipping charge attack, you have not 1, not 2, but 4 weapons. You have your sword, which is one of your most damaging attacks, with the drawback of you have to be standing right next to your opponent to use it. You have a spear, which has more range than your sword and can be thrown directly upwards, which can also allow you to grapple onto the roof and climb around almost like Strider. Now, this is a neat ability, and you would naturally think it affords you to explore the environment in a different way, find extra power-ups, find different routes and stuff, but this ability is really not ever utilized for that. I mean, you can do it to avoid attacks and stuff, but there's genuinely not really a point in the game where it's ever useful to do so. You also have throwing knives, which are your least damaging option, but that said, they have the most range out of all your attacks, with the drawback being it is a manageable resource. You only have so many throwing knives, and then you have to collect more. And finally, you have little hand grenades, which are probably tied with your sword in terms of damage, but are once again a manageable resource you're going to run out of, and they travel in a slight arcing pattern, which means that hitting your actual opponent with them can be a little tricky. But that said, they are probably the most useful weapons in this game. Again, with your low health, being able to attack your opponents from a distance and do a decent amount of damage is appreciated, so these grenades are pretty much your best weapon. But regardless, you have dozens of ways to approach your opponents, coming from the roof, coming from that weird flipping charge attack, using your various weapons, using that bomb, but I would really recommend you don't do that because, that is just disorientingly bad. Basically, you've got a large number of really brutally tough enemies that almost come at you in unfair numbers, but the game at least gives you the tools to take them out. Now, the last thing I really want to talk about in terms of gameplay is the actual level progression, because it's a bit weird. Sometimes you'll run into like these incredibly long vertical levels that take quite a while to get past. Other times you can finish a level in a matter of seconds. And then you've got like boss fights, which can either take quite a while or be really quick depending on how you approach them. It's really kind of genuinely weird, the pacing this game takes. It's not necessarily a bad thing, it just comes across as a little strange. But even though the pacing is weird in this game, there's a great deal of continuity between levels. For example, one level you find like this flying platform thing. The next level you're playing the entire level on said platform. And then the level after that you can find it crashed right in front of you in the next level. It's like there's a little bit of a story being told as you progress through the levels, and that's actually great. It feels like you're actively traversing through this actual real world, as opposed to just going through one level, then the next level, then the next level, with no real connection between them other than we say they're in between point A and point B, so just do it. And that's pretty tremendous. But overall, gameplay-wise, Hagane is ridiculously hard, ridiculously unforgiving, and if you're the person who loves a challenge and loves a really tough, non-compromising action game, this game's totally going to be down your alley. That said, if you're not super confident in your own abilities in these sort of games, this one will probably just frustrate you. Especially when they start dropping like auto-scrolling levels and like vertical climbing levels. At some point, it feels like it's varied, sure, but if you're not prepared for it or you're not on your A game, all it's going to do is kick you into the dirt and laugh at you a bunch of times. And, well, then you're going to have to start over because no continues. Hooray. Fun game though. Now the presentation to Hagane is, well, honestly, I'm a little bit mixed here. Don't get me wrong, the sprites look amazing. My biggest problem with the presentation is a lot of the backgrounds and things just look visually similar. And I get that that's an aesthetic choice, it's supposed to be sort of a gray dystopian future, but it really does make the backgrounds of a lot of levels just sort of blend together, and none of it ends up being terribly memorable or interesting. That said, there are a few really neat levels. There's the one where you're flying in the sky and you can see like this giant ship fall out of the sky in the background that you were on the previous level. Sort of like how I mentioned there's story continuity with the environments and stuff and levels. That stuff is great. I just wish there was more that was noteworthy and memorable about the overall visual design. But like I said, the sprites are great. The audio design to Hagane it's okay. I found one or two of the songs to be pretty pulse-pounding and pretty fitting, but nothing that's all that memorable, and I'm not necessarily certain I would call any of them particularly good, which in turn leads to a slightly above average presentation. Now, if you want a copy of Hagane, like I said at the top, this game is rare and expensive, and not for stupid reasons, kind of like Earthbound, a relatively common game, especially by comparison, that people just charge stupid amounts of money because they think it's rare. For the love of God, Earthbound is not rare. I'm sorry, that just frustrates me how much that game costs. This game, however, doesn't even cost near as much as Earthbound, which is what makes it so funny. It usually sits pretty consistently in the $90 to $120 range, and that's a lot of money for a single game. Do I recommend it? Well, a little yes, but also no. If you're into very, very challenging action games that will put you through your paces, this game is absolutely that. However, it's expensive, it's rare, it's ridiculously tough, and if this is not your kind of game, there's really no reason to look into this other than the fact that it's a collectible. And even then, nowadays with the rise of reproduction cards and stuff, it's almost impossible to tell whether or not you're even getting an official cartridge. Now, I have to give full credit where credit's due. I did not purchase this cartridge myself. This was traded to the show through the Discord thanks to my lovely girlfriend, who had tracked down an actual official copy and decided to trade it to me along with a box of other games. So we got reviews for a while, which is nice, especially in my time of financial need. Go check out my Patreon, not so subtle plug there. But yeah, thanks to my girlfriend for tracking this down for me. This is a game I never thought I'd even see, so to be able to play it is incredibly humbling to me. And I've always wanted to play this. Case in point, it was, prior to my acquiring it, my third most wanted game, period. And I can say, I'm not sure it's necessarily worth the huge price. It's equal parts fun as it is frustrating. But that said, I think if you want to get good at this game, you gotta be a robot ninja, like our boy Hagane here.